Upon entering the main sanctuary of every synagogue that I have ever been in, I recall seeing the following verse embroidered, inscribed, or emblazoned above the ark. Da לפני מי אתה עומד. Know before whom you stand. In comedy circles, we say, know your audience. When I am out with my husband in a group, I sometimes see that look in his eyes and nudge him before he tells that joke I know he is about to tell, to read the room, knowing this group won't get it. Each of these clichés seem rather obvious, and when we think about ourselves, we imagine our communication style will always be met with positivity. But in this fast-paced world where we engage with so many different people on so many different platforms, what happens when we feel ourselves losing the room, losing our cool, or our composure? How can we tap into all of our tools to effectively engage, enlighten, and inspire? And that is what we are going to tackle today. There is an expression in the world of education, you don't do it for the income, you do it for the outcome. This means that everything is a passion project that comes from a personal place. So you know that other expression, don't take it personally? Once upon a time in my career as an educator, everyone cared so much. Parents, faculty, administrators, and students all cared about something related to the school. However, the only place where everyone cared about everything pertaining to the school was at the monthly board meeting. These meetings consisted of volunteer board members who contributed financially and donated their professional expertise without a single one of their children attending the school. The goal was to fill a need that was lacking in the community, the stakes were high, and so were the voices. Before each meeting, I would coach myself that as executive director, I should just give your report and wait to answer the questions that you're asked, Susie. Yet every time I found myself drawn into emotional discussions, feeling defensive, protective, and misunderstood, and losing control of my own agenda. At the time, the stress was more than I could manage. But now I wonder, could I have adjusted my emotional thermostat to keep things comfortable for everyone in the room, including myself? My guest today is the CEO and founder of Smarter Emotions, Balancing Head and Heart, and she is an expert in emotional intelligence. Welcome, fellow New Yorker, Dr. Patricia Baxter. Hola.
Hola.
¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien, muy bien. Thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate it, and I certainly, with the background of my being an educator as well, totally resonated.
Did you feel that viscerally?
Totally. Been there so many times. My career started as a teacher and an administrator in the South Bronx.
Wow.
And yeah, there were a few meetings like that that included more than just a smile or a wink or a fist.
Right? So tell me, what is emotional intelligence? Is it something new, or is it something that we all have access to?
Well, emotional intelligence in terms of a field of study really has only been around 45 years, and has had several, I won't say iterations, but several perspectives from which it has been shown, and seen. Emotional intelligence is that ability to connect with the person on the other side of that tin can. That long tin cans with the string in between, to connect with that other person. However, in such a way that it's more than the words. It's the body language. It's the tone. It's that ability to literally put yourself in the other person's shoes. And that's one of the aspects of emotional intelligence I really like to focus on, and that is the world of empathy.
Yeah. Yeah, and in our society today, I think a lot of misunderstandings come from a place where we don't even pause long enough to potentially put ourselves in someone else's position or perspective. We don't tap into that empathy.
Yeah.
So,
or ask, how are you feeling? How do you see this? How does this affect you? And that's an art, the art of questioning someone in such a way that they don't feel offended by the question, but rather they feel intrigued and invited.
Oh, yeah.
To have a conversation versus a fist fight.
Right. So the how are you with the response, fine. That's not tapping into emotional intelligence.
No, that's a knee-jerk reaction.
Knee-jerk reaction.
To hopefully keep you at arm's distance. Fine is how you get through a difficult conversation or meeting up with someone or a dinner that you don't want to be at. You say fine as a screen.
What about how are you? Could I do better than how are you? If I really wanted to connect with someone, is there a question that I could ask that's better?
Is it better than how are you?
Right.
Well, you can enhance that question the way I see it. I do ask people when I see them, or my clients when I'm sitting down with them in a session, I will say, how are you? And I look at them and I watch their eyes and I watch their body language. And there are little clues that we all leave, in terms of how involved am I, or how involved am I going to be in that answering that question. Am I going to, do a little foot dance and say, oh, man, I'm terrific. How's it going by you? And I deflect it back to you. Or, depending on who's asking that question, I take a look and see, what are you telling me that's not using words? I'm looking at your eyes. I'm looking at your fingers. I'm looking at your tapping foot. And so it gives me more information. And I think that's one of the ways that we can enhance our work with emotional intelligence, is to take the whole picture in. Because we're constantly, I did a session 2 weeks ago about how we are constantly communicating with other people and to ourselves, frankly, through the body.
So interesting. So what I'm hearing is that typically when you ask someone a question, right, you wait long enough for them to give you a response, and really what are we all mostly doing? Thinking about what we're going to say next. Mm-hmm. But if I didn't stop to listen to your answer with all of my senses, you're saying that it's not just my ears, right? If I'm looking down at my phone and I'm typing a text while you're answering my question, am I tapping into my emotional intelligence? No, I'm not. I'm tapping into my typewriter. Mm-hmm. As opposed to looking at you and looking at all of those other nuanced behaviors that will contribute, enhance my ability to judge how you really are, right? By the way, my go-to is the deflection. I'm great, and you? I go right to you, and I'll even ask you a better question about yourself. What's the best part of your day? What was the part that could have been better, right? I'll take it deep down so that you really have to think about you and leave me the hell alone.
Well, those are the questions I would ask at the dinner table,
right?
Of the kids, of the aunts and uncles who are at it. Oh, so what was the best time of your day? What did you do that you really enjoyed? Yeah, it's a deflection unless you're listening.
Right. So earlier I shared a work experience, as an educator, and then being executive director, and then being in a board meetings that were very extra. And ultimately, I did leave that role because of how emotionally exhausting it was. Similarly, we've heard that people don't leave their jobs necessarily for more money, but more often it's because of a bad boss or poor leadership. You work with leaders of big companies all the time. What do you find are some issues that are common in those roles, and how do you coach them?
Well, as you know, I spent 30 plus years in corporate America. I started on Wall Street in the 80s.
Oh, wow.
Yes, there really were wolves of Wall Street.
Yeah.
There really were. And I worked at a number of the larger organizations, and have worked since then in technology and financial services organizations. I left that world having had a number of experiences that showed me that emotional intelligence was more than a nice to have. In order to be able to connect with people, connect with your clients, connect with your customers, connect with your staff, you have to have at least a small box of ways to connect with people. What you said about people leaving not because of money, but because of their leadership. And I did that twice. The first one, major organization, every time I came in to speak with her, interestingly enough, because there's a whole rumor that women, they're really the ones tuned into emotions. No, not always. Anytime I came in to speak with her on what I considered to be a really significant subject, she'd be looking at her screen and typing on the keyboard. Just tap, 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 tap. Not looking at me. And I'm like, so that's what you think of me. Do that again and you will see my backside. And it was just like that. So that was one.
Disrespect. I don't come to work to be disrespected. I'm here to do my job, and there's a modicum of what we expect from people, even if they're not tapping into their emotional intelligence. But it doesn't sound to me like this was an emotional intelligence. This sounded like someone who had bad manners.
Oh, and no emotional intelligence.
So it was on the negative side. She was on like the -4 of emotional intelligence.
-5.
-5. Imagine.
Yeah.
So you left.
And I left, and certainly didn't regret it one bit.
No,
and,
neither did I.
Landed somewhere else. And there was another one where, interestingly enough, those two incidents, the leaders were women, which was very surprising to me. Because I guess before I went to formally study to do my EDD, my PhD, I really had this illusion that women were naturally more emotionally intelligent, more in touch with the connection that comes through emotion. That was my illusion. And there are some aspects of emotional intelligence that women are more adept at. The rest we learn by experience.
Right, or by working on that muscle, right? Yeah. It's like a muscle. If you don't strengthen it, it'll fall to the wayside, right?
It's gaining that awareness. And that's where I always start with a client or with a company. We start with where you are in all those categories of emotional intelligence. There was a client very recently that I worked with who's at second most senior person in the organization. And we did the assessment that I use, the EQI 2.0. And I have to say, I couldn't believe how surprised she was at some of the scores in some of the categories. And she did say to me, I thought I was better at showing empathy. I thought I was better at developing interpersonal relationships.
Interesting.
Those are the ahas that I think the two women I worked for that I left hadn't a clue.
Right.
The company hadn't done them the favor and the investment to help them understand themselves.
So sometimes leaders walk into an already bad environment that they inherit, that they didn't necessarily create. Where would they even start to hit reset, right? Because in order to develop this emotional intelligence with your team, they have to trust you. And if there's a team that's already had this severe distrust or broken trust, you're walking into this. Does this person even have a shot?
Well, one of the things I always advise is start with you. It all begins and ends with you as a leader. So that phrase, know thyself, is a very powerful one for someone in that kind of circumstance. You walk into, well, frankly, I don't think you ever know what you're walking into.
Right?
You know, because in the workplace, we're really good at hiding things. We're really good at not full disclosure.
Right.
And so then we have a leader who comes in, really enthusiastic, can't wait to work with you. I know we're going to go do great things. And next thing they know, they're being sabotaged left and right. And that's because we didn't all come together, or the leader didn't kind of do what I think all leaders should do. And that is sit down and say, let me tell you a little bit about me.
Yeah. Yeah. Open up. How do we build connection? How do we build empathy?
How do we build trust?
How do we build trust? It's by connecting, right? It's caring, it's competence, it's connection, it's compassion, it's all the C words, except for the one C word.
Yeah.
But it's all those important feelings that come before you even open your mouth, right? All of those things that I identified had nothing to do with speaking or communicating or verbalizing. Everything was just being present in the first place. So someone comes into a new environment, your suggestion is don't work from your office. Don't come in and say, my door is always open, and then go to your desk with the door always open. Come out into the bullpen and say, hey guys, gather around. Let me tell you a little bit about where I come from, who I am, and what I see as what we can achieve. Make yourself part of their purpose.
Right. Perfectly said. It's that connection. It's that trust that you have to engender from the very beginning. This is who I am. I'm not going to hide it from you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. This is who I am. This is where I come from. This is what I've done, and this is the stuff I regret doing.
That's another important piece of the puzzle that you just said. The idea that we can take personal responsibility, does that add to the emotional intelligence that we each have?
Yeah, absolutely. It's that. It's something that Brene Brown talks about, vulnerability. And I did a presentation not too long ago about what we feel when we're being vulnerable. Obviously, we feel exposed. We feel endangered. We think that people are going to use this quote-unquote weakness against us, as opposed to saying, you know what, I happen to be human just like you. I just happen to have screwed up just like you. I happen to have, fallen in love just like you. That vulnerability really makes the leader a human being.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, when I look at the Bible, I'm a spiritual person.
Yes.
People who know me know that. They know that the reason that I keep going back is because what I love most about it isn't the thou shalts, it's the humanity of every character that the Bible describes. They're flawed humans, and they have this capacity for forgiveness, right? Which gives us this clue into how we can engage with other people, right? When they say that we're created in God's image, there are certain speakers that say that God's image means that the way you relate to other people is the way God will relate to you. So if you deal with compassion and empathy, then you will be related to with compassion and empathy. But I want to talk about our everyday interactions. Sometimes we think we are connecting and we think we are on the same page, only to realize that we aren't on the same chapter. We're not even in the same book. Because my background informs my emotions, and I can't help that. But that's not the person across from me's problem, right? That's a me problem. That's not a you problem. So at times, this can be upsetting, the feeling of being misunderstood. How can emotional intelligence help navigate these situations when I'm feeling myself getting defensive and riled up? And it may or may not be the other person's fault. It could be intentional. They're trying to push my buttons. But what if it's just a misunderstanding? I still have to self-regulate. Mm-hmm. What are Dr. Baxter's tools for how I can compose myself?
Wow. Well, the very first thing is to recognize you're upset. To recognize that what comes out of your mouth next is going to be going through that filter of being angry or being shamed or being misunderstood. If you understand that that's the filter through which you're going to speak next, that's 1A. Step 1B is asking questions so that, I think being curious about why that person across from you is feeling the way they are, because you have to recognize they are feeling a set or series of emotions or one emotion very, very, very strongly. Asking people, saying, could you tell me more about how I come across to you? Is there, are there certain words that I've said or a sentence or something I did that makes you think that I'm an SOB?
Right.
It's just
constructive criticism
and listening to the language that the other person's using. That's very critical.
For example?
So if someone calls me an SOB, okay, what is that? What behavior showed you that I am an SOB? What did I do? Could you explain it to me? Because I didn't see it. You saw it.
Right, and I really don't want to do it again.
And I want to really learn from it. And I don't want you to feel angry. I don't need you to be defensive. I need you to work with me. So please tell me, what did I do? And I will do my very best not to do it again. I do that with my husband too. So.
Oh my gosh, I do that with my husband every week. All right, so let's take it a step further. Let's talk about the person who pushes my buttons more than my mother even. That would be me. Okay. How do we silence our own inner critic and stop beating ourselves up? How do we put ourselves on a performance improvement plan?
Wow. Interestingly enough, I've been doing that to myself for many decades.
It's exhausting.
It is, but after a while, what I've learned to do is forgive myself, and that is a very powerful thing for me to look at myself and say, okay, you messed that one up. You said the wrong thing. You did the wrong thing. Okay, at this point, does it matter? Is it going to affect my relationship with so and so in the future? How badly is it going to affect it? I don't believe in ignoring it. You can't, because it will bubble up. It will come up again. And that will keep, giving you like a push pin in your side. It's going to hurt. And what I think when that happens for me, I stop. I take a deep breath. And one of the things I've learned along the way is I have to tune into my own physical reactions. What am I feeling? Are my eyes watering? Or is my mouth going dry? Am I starting to do the nervous little, bounce with the knee? What is happening to me physically? And is it something that is habit, or does it serve the purpose? I've been in situations, and I've said this in some speeches, I have been in situations where at a conference table with other people and someone really pisses me off and gets me, and I say, okay, this is obviously going to get me really angry, and I might say something I will live to regret. I have said to people at the meeting, will you excuse me, please? Apparently I had some bad sushi. And I really need to, nobody will stop you.
Nobody ever disputes stomach issues.
Nobody will stop you from leaving the room.
Right, follow us for more hacks. But it's true.
And out I go. And what I do is I see if I have to go to a bathroom stall and just calm myself down. Having that ability to pull yourself out, rescue yourself from that situation is a very powerful thing to do. And once you've done that, having the moment to say, okay, what upset me? Who said it, and do I have some prejudice towards that person? And what can I say next that will advise the person, it wasn't a really fair thing that you said in the meeting. And, if I reinforce that somehow to you, tell me what I did so that I don't do it again. And go from there. I mean, always watching, I always say start with yourself.
Yeah.
Start with your own behavior, your own motivations.
Yeah.
And I have been learning, constantly learning about myself through the help of other people who have counseled me, or simple reflection. I try to journal every day, and that's what I tell my clients, every day journal, because that's you talking to you, and you won't have a better teacher.
Excellent. Excellent. What are some other ways that we can connect with you, Dr. Baxter?
Well, certainly my website, which is drpatbaxter.com. I'm always on LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn is absolutely another way to do it. I have several books that are on my website. The one that I've been talking the most about these days is people are interested in 101 ways to create an awesome, emotionally intelligent team.
Oh, that's a good one. I actually have a copy of that, and I really enjoyed that. It's quick, succinct tips and tools for how to be your best self as a leader and really as a best human and global citizen. Thank you so much, Pat Baxter, for being here and for sharing your wisdom with us. I really appreciate it.
I truly appreciate being here with you.
Now it's time for our honorable mention. Mensch is the Yiddish word for a person of integrity and honor with a sense of what is right and responsible. Talk about a man of honor who knows how to keep his cool under pressure. Former Jacksonville sheriff and president of Edward Waters University, Nat Glover. Mr. Glover has a memoir coming out this summer called Striving for Justice, a Black Sheriff in the Deep South. In his memoir, he shares the challenges he faced growing up in a segregated city, being attacked by an angry white mob, and how he turned those experiences into achievements that positively impacted an entire city, and how his innovative community policing techniques caught the attention of President Clinton and put him on a national stage. The proceeds from the book will fund scholarships for underserved youth, because Mr. Glover says he spent a career putting young people behind bars, and he wants his legacy to be that he gave them an education and a future.